Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the InDiCo-Global first open call information session. My name is Aleta de Cruz, and I'm from Martel Innovate, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Uh, Thank you for joining us today. We're really happy to have this opportunity to share this unique funding aimed at promoting European digital standards on a global scale. And we will cover a range of topics today, from the scope and allocation of the funding to the application and the evaluation process. So we hope that you find this session both informative and engaging. To begin with, I would first like to give the floor to Carlos from DigiConnect, who is the project officer for InDiCo-Global, to say a few words. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning, afternoon, or depending on the geography that you are listening from. Thank you for joining this webinar. And just to say a couple of introductory words, that this is InDiCo-Global, a project that is funding by the European Union under the Horizon Europe budget. And the idea is to promote the EU human-centered agenda on the global stage and promote international standardization, and also the European standards and the European standardization model internationally, and as a general, in general, to promote international cooperation with all the countries that are targeted in this project. Also trying to support the participation of stakeholders that are sometimes having more difficulties, like SMEs, civil society, or academia. And this project has a total budget of 2.5 million euros, and a significant part of it is dedicated to financial support to third parties, which is the scope of this webinar, where my colleagues will explain more in details about these open calls. And just again to thank everyone for listening to the explanations of colleagues, and to the team for putting together this webinar. So back to you, Aleta. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos, and thank you so much for making the time to join us here today. We're really glad that you could be here to give the introduction to the project. So just to sort of give our audience a flow of how the webinar will go, we'll start with an introduction to InDiCo-Global itself, its mission and its values. We'll talk a little about the scope of the project, mainly focusing on geographical and technological areas. And after that, we will move on to the open call application process. Once we're done with all of the presentations, we'll have some time set aside for a Q&A session about the open calls. But please feel free to use the Q&A option on the platform to send in your questions as you have them. You don't really need to wait till the end of the webinar to do that, or the presentations to do that. That being said, let's kick things off. I will hand over to Xavier from Etsy, who's also the coordinator of the project. And Xavier will provide an introduction to the InDiCo-Global project, its missions, and its core values. Xavier.
Thank you, Aleta. And thank you to all the attendees for being there for this webinar. So I will probably repeat a bit of what Carlos already mentioned in the opening statement, but I want to tell you a bit more about the InDiCo-Global project. So InDiCo-Global, and first, what does InDiCo mean? So InDiCo is a contracted form for international digital cooperation. And this is a coordination and support action funded by the European Union under the Horizon Europe project, as Carlos mentioned, which really looks at building and strengthening cooperation between Europe and a number of partners around the globe. It is not the only one of its kind. There have been other projects in the past either bilateral or multilateral, like CESE, CESEC, where we have a European standardization expert deployed in India and China, InDiCo as a predecessor to the present project, and also a bilateral cooperation project with India on ICT standardization. So InDiCo-Global is focusing on ICT, and as you know, ICT has no real boundaries or borders, and so that's why we consider that having this cooperation at international level is very important because it gives us the opportunity to have more common standards and ultimately more shared systems and products. So the former projects I mentioned have helped us gather experience in order to now enter the InDiCo-Global project. This is something that we will now implement as a set of partners with ETSI on my side, with CEN and CENELEC, and ETSI, CEN, and CENELEC are the three organizations recognized by the European Union, for standardization in support of the European legislation. And in the team, we also have Martel Innovate and Trust IT and their subsidiary or affiliate Compla, who will help us with the communication and dissemination activities, as well as this open call process that we will dig into today. So the idea is, of course, to continue on the steps of former projects and also to create a consistent and synergetic approach with other projects of a similar intent in other regions of the world. For example, there is a project called InStar that looks at a slightly different set of geographies but for which there is or with which there is alignment opportunities. So the consortium, as I mentioned it, is these 6 companies, but I have to stress that you have seen Carlos from DigiConnect in the opening statement, and I know Emilio also from DigiConnect is connected, and I believe that we form a greater team than the consortium because there is a very strong connection with DigiConnect in order to implement the project and make it as relevant as possible. What we focus on in this project is basically to be, as I mentioned, a catalyst for collaboration between Europe and a number of countries that are considered partners and where we see potential alignment with on some ICT or digital related topics, where either at policy level or at more technical level, where we see the opportunity to build bridges and let's say support capacity building again in this area of digital. We also seek through this project to help the European Union and the partner countries to understand each other better, to develop a proper grasp of what the other's regulatory framework and standardization model is. And of course, what we want to do also is to promote and explain how we approach the development of global ICT standards in Europe with an inclusive and cooperative, let's say, process. Carlos mentioned it already. We have a 3-year project and 2.5 million budget, which started earlier this year. 1 million out of the 2.5 million will be allocated to the funding of third-party projects through this open call mechanism. And the scope of activity is actually very open. What matters to us is that the activities are ultimately supporting the objectives I just mentioned. It is important to note that InDiCo-Global is not aiming at delivering standards themselves, but rather foster cooperation around the topics that ultimately lead to either adopting common standards or potentially developing them on the longer run, but that's not the primary aim. And last thing before I hand over to my colleague Philippe from the SEN and SENELEC Management Center, we'll have three, I think we can consider that there will be three main streams of activities which link to what I just said. So one is understanding and sharing, where we will have this type of activity where we study and go explain what our model is in Europe, but also where we learn about the ICT standardization and policy landscape in the partner countries, where we connect expert communities and where we develop or create the embryo to have a common work and exchange. It could be at technical, but also at policy level. And then a third stream, I would call it practicing and explaining, where we have activities that will help create this hands-on awareness of standards, where you can actually try and implement at, of course, a basic level, but where you get to know by practicing. So that's all I think on my end, and I will hand back over to Aletta or to Philippe.
I'll take over for now. Thank you, Xavier, and thanks for that insightful overview about the project. It is definitely a critical project for advancing standards within the digital space. So moving on to the project scope, I will now hand over to Philip from SEN and SENELEC, who will delve into the geographical and technological scope of InDiCo-Global. Philip, all yours.
Thank you very much, Aletta. Good afternoon, everyone. Just pop up my screen. Can everybody see nice and clearly? Excellent.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Xavier, for covering the baseline of the project. I'm just going to go into a couple more details, specifically concerning the geographical and the technical scope of the InDiCo-Global project. As you can see here, we've listed the 7 main geographical priorities of InDiCo-Global. As you can tell, we are literally covering a lot of ground. So we've got the entirety of the African Union covering 55 countries. We've got China and India. We've got all of Latin America and the Caribbean. We're also covering Southeast Asia, but also the Eastern Partnership, so countries like Georgia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, and the Western Balkans in Europe as well. There will be a map on the next slide to give you a better idea of really how much we are intending to cover or hoping to cover within the project. But we've got very ambitious plans, and these are also the areas identified by the Commission for the project. We do have some limitations to this scope that I just named. The open call that we have launched is open to organizations, but they are limited to an extent. So for starters, we would accept proposals from any organization based in any of the countries that I've listed here, the 7 priority regions, or the dark blue on the map, as you can see here in front of you. However, we're also accepting proposals from organizations that are headquartered in any European Union member state that are working in the priority region. So, for example, if you are an organization based in Germany that is working in Mali, you would be eligible to apply for the project. We also accept proposals from countries that are as organizations that are headquartered in the EU and Horizon Europe Association countries. So this is the Horizon Europe Association countries. You can find this list specifically on the Commission website concerning the limitations to Horizon Europe, but this includes countries like the United Kingdom and Turkey. So any organizations headquartered in these countries that are associated with Horizon Europe would also be eligible to apply to the open call. So as that is already covering a quite quite large range of the planet. Any other applications that are outside of this geographical scope will not be accepted at this time. As you may know, there will be a series of open calls. We'll launch another one next year and another the year after. We will adjust the scope, the geographical scope periodically and identify weaknesses and see where we need to cover more ground. But for the first call, really, all bets are off. Apply from wherever, as long as you're within these restrictions. In terms of the technical scope, we have identified a handful of key enablers. So these really are the main digital and ICT technologies that we want to address within InDiCo-Global. So it's quite it is a short list, but it is also quite a lot of technologies to cover. We're looking at 5G and 6G, cloud and edge computing, any kind of data. Internet of Things is an interesting topic for us, as well as services related to e-identification and also accessibility of ICT products and services. Then, of course, you can't leave out AI and quantum technologies that are huge right now. But any proposals that are relating to these technologies in terms of thematic events and workshops, bilateral cooperation with other SDOs or the European standards standards development organizations, any kind of training workshops, any kind of hackathons, any kind of developer outreach focused on this technology. These are the things that we would like to see. We do also have another scope within the open call where we are launching a request for landscaping studies for specific regions, countries, or areas. There are full details of this on the webinar website, on the website concerning the open call. But the idea behind these landscaping studies is that we have organizations that are already active in the area helping us identify key targets, key networks. So we'd want to know about government agencies that are involved, specific policy that has been delivered concerning this technical scope, other players, organizations, research, academia that are involved that we should consider in the work we're doing here. Of course, we also want to know about the technical priorities, if there's a higher focus on things like AI or cybersecurity, and why this is the case is, of course, also very interesting to us. It's really just the development of a compendium of information on the existing landscape of this technology, this region, the relevant organizations. And the idea behind these proposals that can be submitted, the deliverable for these projects would look like a study or a report, and also including a presentation with the key findings and suggestions that can be presented during another webinar to target project stakeholders. And then just to wrap things up, I've also included a slide with the expanded technical scope. So while we have the key enablers that I listed earlier, things like AI and quantum, we do have a lot of ground that can be covered. So really anything you can see here goes, anything that is relevant to these areas is interested. It's not specifically limited to this list. So if you have a project that you think relates to digital ICT standardization, but we haven't listed it here, go ahead and submit it anyway, because we're really covering as much as ground as we can. That's all I had for you today. I guess I will pass the floor back to Aletta now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. That was very insightful, and indeed, the project definitely does have a really broad scope and a very comprehensive approach to ICT standardization. Moving on now to a few more details about the open call application process itself. I would like to hand over to Claudio from Trust IT Services, who will guide us through the step-by-step processes for the open call application. Claudio, over to you.
Hello, thank you very much, Aletta. Thank you everyone for having us today. Yes, let me share my screen and we'll be ready to present today. Okay, going full screen. Okay, so today's presentation, it's about the InDiCo-Global first open call, but also about the open call process itself in technical details, but also a bit about the open call process as a whole. So it's gonna touch upon different of these points. Obviously, there might be a couple of repetitions with Xavier and Philippe's presentations, but that's obviously normal. This is pretty much the outline of what I'm going to discuss today, for you to have a quick look and piggyback in case any questions arise on these 7 different points that we'll touch upon. About the general info of the open calls. The total funding of InDiCo-Global, it's €1 million. Okay, the 3 open calls will fund a total of €1 million. Obviously, these are not divided by 3. So according to the type of applications we'll receive in the different open calls, more or less money could be allocated in different open calls. Target regions, once again, you know pretty much about that, and the aims are also clear. The link at the bottom of the slide, it's the link to the first open call. So please apply. Also, we will send it in the chat for you to take a better look at that. But yeah, it's going to be all over the presentation slide deck for you to have a look. Okay, this is a timeline about the open calls in detail. The first open call opened on May 6, 2024, and therefore will close on August 5th, 2024. So we are less than halfway through the open call time span. Actually, we are actually in between, really in the middle. And you can see there is a timeline of the estimated timeline for the other open calls. So essentially, we already opened in month 2 the open call for the experts, the pool of external experts, which will be the evaluators for the projects that will be submitted in the 3 open calls. And we already had a very significant number of applicants there. And open call 1 opened on May 24. So month 5 of the project, since the project started, it's closing on month 8, so on August, and there will be obviously an evaluation phase of 2 months, which will be also finalized by the contractualization. And after that, there is a pretty much 1-year time span for projects to work. Obviously, all different deliverables and steps will be defined on a project by project basis. But you need to remember that there is a cap of €50,000. Okay, for each project. So there's a total budget of €1 million, but we can fund projects not over €50,000. And we will notify as quick as possible, mid-August, if we want to be quick, or between August and September, let's say, the winning project. So you have time to apply, and you'll be notified in a timely way. So the next steps for us before the open calls, the first open call submissions come in, are actually to start selecting our external pool of experts. Okay, priorities. This is a bit repetitive compared to what Philip already discussed. Just to reiterate, we have some key policy agendas. We have some key tech areas, okay, which have been extensively already discussed by Philip. We have some key teams, obviously, that we prioritize, but these are just, portion of those, okay? More details are available on the open call page, okay? Comprehensive list is going to be available there. What are the eligible activities and costs? I think this is an important question to answer to. I think I already saw in the Q&A a couple of questions about that, so it's important that we go through them a bit more in detail. Policy transition analysis are very important for us. Thematic events, workshops, hackathons, this is something that Philip's already mentioned, training. So all sort of interactive activities that are aimed at bridging gaps, bringing communities together. This is what we want to do. So these are all acceptable for us, and they are some of our priority funding activities, okay? Eligible costs include obviously personnel, equipment, travel costs, subsistence, dissemination, subcontracting for travels and for example, night stays, trips. There are specific criteria of the European Commission that are also linked in the open call text. So you can refer back to that. These are all properly linked there. And so you can calculate the amount of travel costs and subsistence that you can apply for based on the country you're coming from, the country you're going to, the amount of days you're staying in a certain place. So these are all detailed. Obviously, feel free to email us for further information, but you should be able to find all the details, and then you can include them in your project timeline, okay, and the estimated cost in your budgeting process. Funding principles, it's obviously we do lump sum pre-financing, and we do a final payment based on deliverables. So essentially, it's a lump sum process. We evaluate it step by step on a step-by-step basis. So you get a pre-financing, and then there might be intermediate steps depending on the type of project you're proposing to us, but then there will be obviously a final payment based on what on the accomplishments, right? Evaluation criteria, very important, I think, to touch upon, also extensively described in the open call text, but again, worth reiterating for the records. Impact and alignment with the call accounts for 30% of the overall evaluation criteria. 30% is also the technical excellence and relevance of the project. Also, experience and qualifications account for 20%, as well as the economics of the proposal, okay? So the final score is automatically determined by the average in scores for the various, that the evaluators give to the various, to these 4 points. And then it's obviously a weighting process, right? So the 30% ones are a bit more relevant, and the overall score is based upon that. In case of a tie between 2 or more projects, there are some sub-criteria which we like to take into account. Okay, these are kind of not measurable in a percentage way, but these are, I mean, if you can address 1 or more of these, the more you can address these topics, the better is for us, obviously. So the involvement of other stakeholders, the relevance for our topics, the inclusion of the target country in the standardization ecosystem, participation in international global standards development organizations, proven capacity or relevance in the chosen area, and so on and so forth. So there are many criteria. They are all extensively detailed once again in the open call text. So piggyback to that case. A bit more into the really technical, let's say, step-by-step process of application. You need to access the InDiCo-Global grants.eu. With that, you have to log in or create an account, okay? After filling the registration form, then you log in again, and you receive a confirmation email to set a password, okay? After that, you can access your profile anytime by clicking on your dashboard. So essentially, this is, again, sort of the page of my colleague, Sabrina. So we are admin, so it will look pretty much like that with a couple of less features there. So essentially you access your dashboard, and then you can in the dashboard you'll have different calls that you can apply for linked to InDiCo-Global. Obviously you select the call you want to apply for. In this case we're talking about the first open call, and pay attention obviously to the opening and closure dates, okay, at the down left part, okay? So be really careful looking at that. It's actually closing, for example, on the in this case in the 5th of August at 5 p.m. Okay, so be careful of that. It's not midnight, it's 5 p.m. Central European Summer Time. Okay, and so again, there is no way out of this process. You need to apply through the platform. So follow these steps. After that, obviously, you will have the whole application form, which you need to compile. There are some, obviously, sections that are mandatory. So if you do not properly fill them, you will be unable to submit. You can insert additional file in the proposal file upload, also a CV. So these are also very relevant documents that we want you to upload in this case. As attachment, preferentially, we would like you to use a PDF format, obviously. Then you can save the draft if you need more time, right? So you're able to go on sort of a more step-by-step process. You can break the workflow into different moments if you want to take some time to take a better look at the application process. So you're able to save the draft and then rework it. And then whenever you're ready, you just click submit, the submit button. And this is it from my side. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Feel free to email us. And I will stop sharing now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. And I hope that was definitely very helpful and very clear in terms of guidance to all the potential applicants. We have already had a few questions in the Q&A option of Zoom, some of which have already been answered by our panelists. So thank you very much for going ahead and doing that. Now now the floor is open for the Q&A session. So please, if you have any more questions or if something is unclear, please feel free to submit your questions, and our panelists can talk about it a little more in detail. Well, while we wait for questions to come in from the attendees, I do have a couple of questions for the panelists, and maybe you can go into detail on those fronts till then. So maybe the first question on my side is, can members of SEN, Senelec, or ETSI apply for project funding through the InDiCo-Global open calls? Maybe Philip or Xavier can take that on.
I can answer the question.
Yes.
Thank you, Aletta. So I think what's important to stress is that the project has made it such that it is not the project partners that actually perform the evaluation for the proposals, but rather a panel of independent experts that we have created in order to do that. So that's to avoid this situation where we are both in a position to decide who gets funding, and where potentially some of our members are applying for this funding. So in order to create that environment where the opportunity of funding is also open for the members of ETSI, SEN, and Senelec, we have established basically this mechanism, which means that ultimately SEN, Senelec, and ETSI members can be applicants for the project. There is only one case where this would not be the case, and that is if one of the experts that we have selected for the panel of independent evaluators is actually from the applying company. And in that case, that company's applications are ruled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Xavier. I hope that was also clear for our attendees. We have another question from one of our attendees, that is, are there mandatory partnership requirements with organizations in the priority regions? Maybe Philip, would that be relevant to you? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Aletta. Xavier and I were actually just exchanging about this exact topic, because indeed the website only states that we are looking at organizations that are headquartered in any European Union member state that has been working in the priority regions. We agree that there hasn't been a very specific formal requirement listed or noted. So to that extent, I don't think we would require one, but of course, having past, present, or future activities or presence in these regions would be a huge benefit to the application. So no formal requirement, but experience in any kind would be beneficial.
Thank you. And then also, while talking about the open calls, we have another question that is, can organizations apply for the 3 annual open calls and get funding every 3 years? So essentially, can they win all 3 of them, or is it just one open call that an organization can potentially win? Whoever would like to, please go ahead.
Yes, Aletta, maybe I can try to answer to this one, but also to a previous question that Oleg posed. So let me do both. The one, Oleg, is, can you update submitted proposal? You cannot update submitted proposal, but you can save it as draft, right? As I said before, so be really careful before you hit that button, because you have time and you can save draft as many times as you want. Do that first, maybe. So this is to the first question. About the organization can apply for the 3 annual calls. I think obviously if you apply, I mean, technically you can apply for the 3 open calls if you can propose interesting projects that are all different from each other. because naturally, if you're doing a project that is on a related topic compared to the previous ones, okay? So let's say you applied for the first open call with a certain project, you got funded, you successfully completed your project and all went well. Then of course you could apply for the second open call, but if it is too similar what you propose, obviously the evaluators will notice also, because if you choose a certain topic, there is the same one, the evaluators are likely to be the same ones, right? So we're probably going to use the same people to evaluate, and they will notice that. And so obviously this is not going to help you, right, in that sense. So you might be rejected because of that. So in principle, I believe you can. There is nothing against that, but you need to really make a point that you're able to, for example, touch upon different topics that are relevant, propose a completely different project, or a very nicely updated version of the previous one, a follow-up that is significantly, further developing what you proposed in the past, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Claudio. We have another question from Justina's, which is, does the 50K per organization cap include subcontracting? And if yes, will you verify who the chosen subcontractors are? Maybe again, Claudio, would that be for you?
Yes, I can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it does. And I think obviously we need to, you need to provide us with information, right? You need to let us know why this is relevant, right? Why do you want to do some subcontracting, and why this is important for the project itself? So it needs to be well motivated, but in principle, I don't see anything against that.
Thanks, Claudio. The next one is possibly maybe Philip can respond to that one. It says, I assume that it's from Robert, and Robert says that he assumes that the targeted or beneficiary countries should agree or at least have no objection to a proposal that is meant to be implemented in that country. Is that correct?
Yes, sorry, I was just reading that myself to make sure I understood it correctly. If I am, you're asking if, the country that is being targeted, so for example, let's say Egypt, they should agree on, or at least not have an objection to, a proposal that should be implemented in that country. You assume correctly. Obviously, your proposal would hugely benefit from having collaboration or approval with local partners, so that your project can go forward and hit the right targets. So of course you can try to submit a proposal without the approval of the target region, but the question is of whether that would then be successful compared to those that do have the approval.
Thank you, Philip. Maybe the next one, maybe Xavier, would be something you could respond to. What kind of organizations will be eligible to apply? Should it be government organizations and a national standardization body, or can it involve partnerships between two government organizations?
So we are not limiting applicants. As long as they have a status as a legal entity, whether in any of the geographies that Philip explained, can provide applicants. So there's no requirement that this be a government organization or a national body or a combination of both. Of course, a proposal that exhibits strong links or some kind of partnership with relevant actors in the target geography will sound more attractive to us, provided, of course, that the topic is relevant itself. But this is about policies and standards for digital. So the relevant players in the target country will need at some stage to be involved or to be, let's say, engaged in the activities. So it's definitely a bonus to have those links with local organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question. I think maybe Philip, this would be relevant for you.
Yes.
For landscaping studies, as an example, please clarify the maximum amount for which an application can be submitted to execute the studies.
So I think I understand this in the way that you want to know what the maximum funding is that you can receive for a proposal that is covering a landscaping study. This is the same as all the other proposals as well. It's up to 50,000 euros. However, of course, you would need to justify the costs. So I can't imagine, what do I know? But everything needs to be justified as to what funding you require for what. So that would then indicate how much you require to successfully submit your project.
Thank you. While we wait for some more questions, if any, I have another one for the panelists. To what extent are the InDiCo-Global open calls similar to those that they have in STAN ICT? Maybe Xavier?
Well, not involved in STAN ICT personally, but my understanding is that the STAN ICT project will mainly support participation of European experts in standardization activities at international or global level. As I mentioned in my earlier statements, there is no intent, let's say, by the InDiCo-Global project to actually engage in standards development. So I believe that there is complementarity in the two projects to the extent where InDiCo-Global can help build the initial connections and the bridges and the alignment that will allow the European Union and a partner country to have similar views on a specific topic related to digital, and the supporting standards, if they are currently under development, may require participation of experts in the relevant standardization organization or forum. And STAN ICT is a mechanism that can be used in order to support participation in those standardization bodies. And that's where I see the complementarity. But there is, I think, I don't know, Claudio, if you have more to say about this, feel free to do so. I understand Trust IT is the lead or the coordinator for STAN ICT. Thank you.
Yes, Xavier, thank you so much. I think it's a very good way to answer this question. I think there is a complementarity, as you said before. Definitely, STAN ICT acts more in a European-based level, and also it is more about working towards the definition or refinement of existing standards. So it's a bit of a different type of animal, but the two can totally interact with each other. So I do see this connection too, potentially in sort of pitching an idea with InDiCo-Global and then further develop it with STAN ICT. And for what it's worth, there are also other standardization projects based on open calls. For example, there is also HS Booster. There are many different standardization projects that can sort of complement what InDiCo is doing in that sense. Sorry, Aletta, one other thing. I noticed that it came back, the question about the funding, the subcontracting funding. So let me make things more clear. Let me make it clearer. You can be funded also for subcontracting costs. The maximum amount is 10,000 euros, okay? And the overhead of 25% is not applied to these costs. And obviously, this is within the budget of the project you're submitting. So if you're applying for 50,000 euros and you're wanting to use subcontracting for 10,000 euros, you have 40,000 euros left, and the overhead is applied only to this 4,000 euros.
Thank you for clarifying that, Claudio. And while you're unmuted, though I see you muted yourself again, but anyway,
But I can talk,
while
no
you're
worries.
Perfect. We have another question from Derek, which essentially says how many proposals can be submitted per organization? Can one organization have multiple applications?
Okay, well, interesting question, I think. Again, I do not see a limit for that necessarily, but I do see a need to really be good at justifying that, right? If you are, for example, proposing cooperation with in one, with South America, or in the other one with Asia on different topics, that's something that I think it's acceptable, because if you're contributing to, building bridges between tech communities with different key geographical areas, I think it's perfectly fine. It's totally acceptable. But again, if you're doing two very similar things, it will be seen as double funding, obviously. So in principle, yes. I suggest you do it maybe in different open calls, though, and also that you diversify, right?
Thank you, Claudio. I think the next two questions would be for Philip. The first one is, should the landscaping study be part of your proposal or a standalone project?
Thank you, Aletta. So I believe, and Xavier, feel free to correct me here, but we had understood the landscaping studies to be a standalone project. As the result of the project would then be the landscaping report and the presentation with the project beneficiaries or targets. If there's a way you can implement it into another proposal you have in mind, then that's great. But our intention was for it to be a standalone project.
And thank you, but stay unmuted, please. Then the next question that I think would be relevant for you is, the attendee asks, did I understand correctly that a proposal may target a topic within the expanded technical scope and not the key enablers as such?
I will answer this after Xavier has added on to my previous comment, as I see he has raised his hand.
Yes, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Philip. I just wanted to add one more thing. The reason why we want to have the studies, or what we consider that the studies should be a standalone project, is that we are really keen on building on the results of these studies. So the earlier we have those results in the project, the more we can exploit them to increase relevance of our activities in the project. If study is part of a more complex project, definitely what we will require is that the study results are delivered early in the project to respect, I would say, this intent, or to support this intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. I will then follow up on the other question that Aletta just read. Did I understand correctly that a proposal may target a topic within the expanded technical scope and not the key enablers as such? Actually, I guess our answer would be the inverse. So the key enablers are the priority topics, the main topics that we want to have addressed by InDiCo-Global. And the expanded technical scope is beyond that. So we will accept proposals from those as well, but we of course would like to see proposals focusing on the key enablers of AI, 5G, quantum, and so on and so forth. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Philip. Can you hear me? Sorry, okay. One last question, which I think is directed towards at Claudio. So it says the portal reads, applicants will only be accepted from individuals, and any applications for more than one person will be considered ineligible. Can you please clarify? We understand that organizations are applicants, not only individuals.
Right. So I think that what is meant here is that obviously each application has to have the name of a certain person. You cannot apply as, 2, 3 individuals at the same time, essentially. So there has to be a contact person, let's say, representing the given organization. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's say I'm from Brazil and Xavier is from Belgium, and we want to apply. One of us has to be, the recipient person, right? That sort of is the contact person for this specific project. So I cannot apply in under my name, Xavier's name, Philip's name. We need to be there's need to be one individual that is the applicant in this case, representing that organization, right?
Thank you. I hope that is clear. Well, we have the last 5 minutes. So, is there anything else that any of the panelists would like to address or emphasize on or add on as information before we close the webinar and open floor to everybody? Xavier, anything that you would like to add on? Yes, sorry.
No, I mean, I don't have much to add here. I believe that there is a very good opportunity with this type of funding to increase our engagement and cooperation with the targeted geographies in InDiCo-Global. It is a way to actually build a connection between organizations in Europe and in the partner countries and give them the opportunity to work on something that will actually give results and will see their efforts supported with a bit of funding. And we are hopeful that this will be really a catalyst in kickstarting a more long-term cooperation between the regions. That's why I believe we need to encourage these applications. And of course, if there are any further questions following this webinar, we'll be happy to answer them and add the answers to the open call page so that the whole process and purpose is made as clear as possible to the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We really do hope that the Q&A session has provided further clarity on the first open call for the project. Well, as we come to the end of our webinar, I'd like to thank all our speakers for their valuable insights and all of you attendees for joining us today. I know you are all from different locations and different time zones, so thank you for being here. We hope that you have a clear understanding of the project, of the first open call, and we are excited to see your proposals come through. Please remember that the deadline for submission is the 5th of August at 5 p.m. CEST. Yes, if you have any further questions, please reach out to us and we'll try and give you as much information as possible. The recording of the webinar and the slide deck will be made available on the InDiCo-Global website in the coming days. So please keep an eye on the website, or you could follow our Twitter and LinkedIn channels so you get notifications on your social media channels as well. For now, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for participating. And yeah, as I said before, we look forward to receiving your proposals and seeing the impact that they have. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of the day and a good weekend.